Um, so you guys have been doing 4 close placements of mindfulness with Youngzi Rinpoche, is that right?
Uh, Rinpoche did teach one class, kind of a really general talk on mindfulness in general, and I've been leading weekly classes on kind of the same thing with a little bit more focus on the body. And October, we're gonna, I think, I mean, it's hard to talk just about one mindfulness foundation for a whole month, but but a little bit more focus on feelings this month, Vedana. But whatever kind of broad insights you have about the practice in general is wonderful.
Sure, sure. Well, it's an important practice, and it's a nice universal to all forms of Buddhism practice, although we all approach it slightly differently. When you're looking at the 4 close placements of mindfulness, it's related to the 3 higher trainings, and particularly the higher training in wisdom. And so it's like you're observing one object of meditation with the agenda to see that it lacks inherent existence. So it's kind of calm abiding and special insight together, although you're going to get some variation on how people describe that. But it's basically like picking one of those 4, body, feeling, mind, or phenomena, watching it with the agenda to see it through the lens of wisdom. So when you're looking at feeling in particular, there's a lot of different meditations related to feeling, but the first thing we want to remember is that feelings are not wisdom, right? They're a response. They are the ripening of previous karma. And we can view them through the lens of wisdom, but in and of themselves, they shouldn't mandate action. And the problem is that they do, right? So you feel pleasant, and then you chase what you've given credit to the pleasure. Yeah, you chase it, you want more of it. Or you feel unpleasant, you feel mentally unwell or physically, sort of mentally unwell or physically unwell, and the feeling of unwellness or unpleasantness then seems to mandate aversion, but it doesn't have to. Or if you're feeling neutral, that can mandate or seem to mandate indifference or apathy, but it doesn't have to. And so if you're taking your feelings as the criteria for making your decisions, you're kind of living in the past and riding the wave of old habits, some of which might be outdated. So the first step before you even get into the wisdom part is just to try and sit with that. What is my relationship to feeling? Can I break the association of pleasant leading to attachment, unpleasant leading to aversion, neutral leading to indifference? Can I break those associations and see them as the ripening of past karma? And then how I respond to them creates the future karma. So you're wanting your mental factor of intention to relate to feeling in a healthy way. And you're wanting your mental factor of discernment to become educated about how to do that. So you're getting all of your thoughts to work with you as opposed to just kind of going along autopilot. And so some of this doesn't even need to be done in meditation. Some of this is just your clear logic reflected with your past experience, thinking deeply, and putting the dots together of why plans have failed in the past. So just very gently, but very precisely starting to tease out those relationships between what you feel and how you respond to it. And we don't want to go so far with this that we like overpower common sense or we try and talk over the top of survival responses. That's not what's being asked of us. It's more that we're looking through the lens of wisdom. So the first layer of wisdom is just breaking associations between feelings and negative responses. The next layer is to see that we often identify with our feelings so much so that they feel like the core of I or me. When you're looking at close placement of body, it kind of feels like the body is the house for the self or the abode of the self. And we try and unpack that and see how that's not the case. With feeling, it can either feel like feelings are you, and that is the core of you, is how you experience, or it can feel like they are some possession of the self. Yeah, one of those two. And neither of those two are true, but just kind of sitting with your own daily life experience. Is it I feel, therefore I am? Or I am and my feelings relate to me in this direct kind of servant master kind of way? It's interesting to explore our relationship to what feeling is, but if you think about other places in Buddhism that feeling is described, like in the 12 links of dependent arising, and you see that picture of the wheel of life, feeling is depicted by a man with an arrow in his eye. And you think, wow, that's a little graphic, but it's showing us that you cannot ignore feeling, just like you cannot ignore an arrow in your eye. Yeah. So whether it's pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, we're not trying to talk over the top of our feelings or smush them, but we're also trying to not use them as a criteria for truth. So just trying to like feeling them as responses, feeling them as sensations, understanding them to be related to the past gives us more chance for choice. Yeah, if that makes sense. So the way you relate to feeling is huge in Buddhism, but what's very important is that you don't become disassociated and pretend not to have any. It's about changing your relationship to them as opposed to not having any. Yeah. And so if you start relating to your feelings from a healthy perspective, for example, you feel something unpleasant in the body, you can think, this is old negative karma ripening. This is also the present condition of having not eaten properly. Two things, yeah? And I can manage eating a little bit better, more vegetables, more spinach. Yep, okay, that's the plan. Also, I'm going to not let the fact that my body feels uncomfortable allow me to be grumpy. You know, normally it's like, oh, now I have permission to be grumpy because I don't feel well. And it's like, take the reins, take the power back and say, actually, I must have done something harmful with my body in the past. And now it's ripening under the influence of these current conditions. If I ride it out well and I don't respond with further harm, that karma finishes. It's done. Yeah, I might have many more of the same, but that particular one is done. So you're not kind of repeating these negative patterns again and again. You're choosing to do something different, and that helps you change the momentum of how you feel in your body. And then similarly with your mind, you feel something unpleasant arise in your mind, bit of a bad mood. Can you feel the difference between having a bad mood and giving into it, and having a bad mood and not giving into it? You know, you can feel a little bit like angsty, a little bit irritable, a little bit annoyed, and decide that that is truth and that is how you're going to feel today, and just go with it. And the actions of your speech and mind and body all relate and get swirled up and reinforce it. Or you can say, yeah, that's arising. I could unpack some of the surface conditions which brought it about. Maybe I didn't sleep enough. Maybe I had an argument with my friend. Maybe something's eating me. Those are some surface conditions why my mood might be bad. And then the deeper cause is having caused harm mentally or having destructive mental states in the past. Two things coming together. So again, if I respond with patience, if I respond with loving kindness, that karma finishes and I don't create more of the same. I mean, if we're talking not even Buddhism, we're just talking about neuroscience, it's starting to change our neural pathways, but we're talking about something even more subtle than the brain. So kind of having the fortitude to change your patterns, it takes kind of a tremendous act of will. You have to really decide, I'm going to relate to my own inner experiences differently because of what that will lead to. You know, it'll lead to more peace of mind, it will lead to more flexibility of mind, and then my actions will be more skillful towards others as well. It means I don't ruin things for myself because I've fully bought into the story of my responses from the past. So feeling is really delicate. It's an interesting thing to start working with because our current tendency is usually to fully give in, fully believe, and build a story of why, or to completely ignore, completely dissociate, and pretend they're not there at all. Does that ring true? One of the other, or both, depending on the day, they take turns. You like fully give in. I feel crap today, therefore everybody stay out of my way, or I'm going to isolate, or whatever. Or no, 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 I don't feel bad. I don't feel bad. And you talk over the top of yourself and you become kind of inauthentic and ingenuine in a way that creates some dissonance for the people around you. They'll say, "How are you?" And you'll go, "Oh, fine, fine." And really you're like filled with rage. You saying fine kind of creates a dissonance because the other person's like, "I don't think you are, but obviously you don't want to talk about it. I don't know what's going on. Talk later." It creates kind of a jangliness between you, which doesn't mean you need to suddenly be excessively candid and be like, I have this deep-seated melancholy about the nature of life, and I have all of these worries and angst about all of my relationships, and I'm worried about this with my health and my finances. You don't have to go into a whole story, but you could say, oh yeah, yep, a little bit of a rough morning. That feels more genuine than saying, oh, fine, fine, when really you're not fine. So it's somehow like landing on here's what's happening without saying this is me. This is what's happening within me. Yeah, Jordan, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, that's really helpful. And sure, yeah, I mean, the being aware of that, um, those moods and physical pain too. It's one of the hardest aspects of my practice of noticing that and not buying into the feeling, just acknowledging it and then choosing a skillful response. One question I had, I almost remember another teacher saying something about the arrow in the eye uh, being an indication of the inherent suffering of all feelings, whether they're positive, neutral, or negative. Something to that effect. Does that sound right?
I mean, certainly samsaric feelings are all going to be in the nature of suffering, even the happy ones. Yeah, absolutely. That's true. Yeah. Yeah. I always try and avoid the word inherent just because how we use it in other contexts. But yeah, you're quite right. Yeah. Even the good feelings, not so good, conditioned by an edge of discontent or a worry about it ending or the fact that it will end or et cetera, et cetera. Definitely.
And you may have already touched on this, uh, and I'm sure you probably were planning on talking about it, but the how do you see the difference between mindfulness, the practice of the four foundations? It seems like there's sort of a couple of levels of practice. One is when you're sitting on the cushion and trying to use mindfulness to enter calm abiding and insight versus sort of a general mindfulness in your daily life of connecting the dots on skillful behavior and that sort of level.
Yeah, yeah, we use the word in so many different contexts. Mindfulness, the mental factor is non-forgetting. Yeah, non-forgetting. So you're either not forgetting your meditation object in a single pointed way, or you're not forgetting your agenda to stay in alignment with bodhicitta in your daily life as you're walking around. Close placement of mindfulness is placing mindfulness with wisdom. So it's less emphasizing the skill of calm abiding concentration because the assumption is you already have it to a certain degree, and it's more emphasizing the skill of wisdom or insight. So you're placing your mindfulness with wisdom on the object of one of the four placements, right? So either say it's feeling, you're placing your attention on feeling, but with wisdom coloring it. So it's like calm abiding and spatial insight combined, but for us at our level, they flicker between holding awareness of the feelings unfolding and holding awareness of those feelings not being self. So it kind of goes between that. So you have to kind of catch feeling first. What is feeling like physically and mentally? And kind of watch the fact that you have feeling and kind of zero in on that in amongst all the other things happening in your mind. And you stabilize there. And then you're watching it with the agenda to see how it is not inherently existent and how it is not self. And the way you do that is lots of different ways. Yeah, lots of different ways. But it's colored by the study you've done prior to sitting. So the study you've done prior to sitting helps you understand, one, that feeling doesn't stand alone. It doesn't arise out of nowhere from nothing. So you think, all right, why do I feel what I feel? Okay, it's karma ripening, meeting current conditions. And also, some of those conditions are my own mental factors, how I'm describing what I see to myself, how I'm describing what I hear to myself, how I'm framing the feeling is a condition of what feelings are ripening. So if you're starting to condition your response with, if I'm feeling unpleasant, how can I use this on the path and even think of it as useful? Then it colors the whole way you view feeling, and different feelings start to arise. It's a little bit like someone who is conditioned themselves to liking feeling the burn when they exercise. Right? Like at first, the stress of exercise and that sort of lactic acid situation or whatever, it's uncomfortable. You don't like the feeling of when your body starts getting tired from exercise. But if your mind keeps saying, this is making me stronger, this is making me stronger, you can even start to enjoy that sensation. For better or for worse, right? Skillfully or unskillfully, that's another story. But, we can train our mind to change its attitude towards experience. And part of our problem is that we think our labeling of experience is self-evident. But think about if you've ever looked after little kids, and little kids are running around and playing outside, and then they skin their knee. Yeah, the little kid skins their knee, and it's the first time they've had a big knee skin. They haven't really had that ouch before. They kind of stop, and they're not sure how big a deal it is. So they turn and look at the adults like, are you worried? Then I'll cry. Are you not worried? I'll cry a little. Do I need more attention in this moment? I'll cry a lot. But like they're not sure how big a deal it is. They know it's something. Yeah, but your response to them very much mandates how escalated it becomes. And if you scoop them up and give them a big hug and a kiss and say, "Oh, that was scary, wasn't it? Anyway, off you go." Then they're like, "Oh, okay." Yeah. And if you're like, "Oh, honey, oh," and then they're like, "I know," and then they cry and cry. Yeah, so it's a little bit like our feelings are the children of our mind, and our other mental factors are like the parent saying, actually, you can think of it this way. And just like a parent, sometimes you're skillful and sometimes you're unskillful. Yeah, sometimes you say things that make it worse, and sometimes you say things that make it better. Yeah, but thought transformation is very much like being the parent of your own feelings, conditioning them, holding them, coloring them differently so they become less problematic. So mindfulness is not a simple thing to unpack because it's so context based. Yeah, but if you think the simplest definition is not forgetting the object you set your mind upon, then you can apply it to the various contexts. Yeah.
Yeah, very helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. Other thoughts about feeling so far, or things to clarify or ask about? It can be quite a fun project to isolate one mental factor like feeling and make that be the project of the day or the week or the life, right? And just kind of examine what is going on with feeling and then how am I relating to it. Just as easily, you could shift gears and say, what is going on with discernment? How am I distinguishing between things? And then what are the labels I'm putting on top of them? And just notice your constant litany of opinions. And, and even if it's not in words, there is discernment. But, you could choose any one of the mental factors to kind of start changing the relationship to it and making it better. But feeling is kind of the most problematic for us. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I just, this discussion is making me realize how I and maybe a lot of people pay a lot of attention to pleasant and unpleasant, but totally miss the boat on neutral, which is maybe you think you're a really good practitioner and things are going really well, and but you're kind of like in this neutral mode between pleasure and pain, but you're
Mm,
not really paying attention to the fact that you're still in a feeling, and,
yeah.
that quality of kind of, yeah, losing your bodhicitta, for example, being aloof to um, larger motivations.
Mm. Yeah, it's so easy for it to turn into indifference. It can almost feel like neutrality and indifference are the same thing when they're not. Yeah, and maybe for, regular, relatively calm adult people, it might be that the feeling of neutrality is up often, that we're not super happy, we're not super sad, we're not super pleasant, not super unpleasant. We're just kind of cruising along. And, it's very easy for that to turn into indifference. Yeah, or to a type of apathy or a type of passiveness, and absolutely easy to lose bodhicitta. Also easy to lose renunciation because it's not like life is that bad, It's not amazing, it's not horrible, it's just do to do, and then you forget about renunciation. And the three higher trainings and the four close placements fall under the heading of the higher training of wisdom. The three higher trainings are only higher trainings if they have renunciation. Yeah, otherwise they're kind of just practicing. And so the higher training in ethics or morality needs to be conditioned by renunciation, the determination to be free. So you don't want to hurt yourself. That's why you're being ethical. Of course, you don't want to hurt anyone else. Of course, of course. And, we want to layer bodhicitta on top of these ideas. But you're starting from a very clear, rational perspective of if I don't want pain, I have to stop creating the causes for pain. Namely, the causes for pain are lack of ethics or going against ethics, being harmful. Yeah. So you're reinforcing your morality with renunciation, and your renunciation morality become mutually reinforcing. And then you start developing concentration, and concentration from the higher training perspective also needs to be conditioned by renunciation, the determination to be free from samsara. And that becomes a little bit more subtle. But if you think experientially, when you're trying to focus, right, when you're really trying to develop your concentration, what stands in opposition to your concentration? What is the contents of your own distractions? And it's often things that are samsaric. Yeah, your senses want to be delighted. So you just kind of scan through them, finding ways to entertain yourself because you're chasing samsaric pleasure. And so if you have this determination to be free from samsara underpinning your concentration, so much easier to focus. Yeah, and then we get to wisdom, and wisdom needing renunciation, the determination to be free from samsara starts to make a lot of sense because you realize that it's with this wisdom you will cut the root of samsara. Does that make sense? So we're skipping to the end. We're going straight to the wisdom because why not? Right? But the four close placements as objects of meditation are intellectually fairly easy to get your head around, even if experientially some of them get a little bit subtle. The body, quite straightforward. Feeling, after a few minutes, pretty straightforward to find it and watch it. Then you get into mind, and we're talking primary consciousness, main mind. That can be a little bit harder. And then you get into phenomena, and that can sometimes be way more subtle or sometimes way more easy depending on your habituation with your own mind, basically. But they're clear words. And if you sort of know the agenda of what do you do when you find what you find, it can be a very enriching meditation, even if it's quite short. Yeah. But it has to be There has to be the preamble of having studied a bit first. Otherwise, you're like, okay, I'm watching my feelings unfold. So what? you know? And it might be that just by watching your feelings unfold without any particular agenda, you might start to notice that they're impermanent. You might start to notice that they change moment to moment. And that kind of quiet, passive knowing is useful. Yeah. It might be that just passively watching feelings unfold, that you might start to realize that they're all conditioned by suffering. That might start to happen, but probably only if you've studied first. Yeah. Etc. So it's like passive watching can have a benefit, but it's better to be clearer about your agenda of what are you watching for? Yeah. What are you watching for? You're watching to see the way the mind grasps at feeling as inherently existent, or the way the mind grasps at feeling as being the self, or the combo of that. Yeah. So the relationship between the four close placements and then the four seals that we did in the past, there's a very clear connection, and that through understanding one, you understand the other. And those connections we can talk about in the fullness of time, but they all are interrelated and then help you relate to also the Four Noble Truths. So that's quite cool. Yeah, that's quite cool. So there's a little short section from His Holiness, maybe it helps reinforce it all. This is from the World of Tibetan Buddhism. His Holiness says, the individual must perfect the three higher trainings. The training in insight or wisdom acts as the actual antidote to ignorance and its derivative delusions. However, it's only when training in higher insight is conjoined with highly developed faculty of single-pointedness of the mind that all of one's energy and mental attention can be focused on a chosen object of meditation without distraction. Hence, the training in higher concentration. Concentration is an indispensable factor in advanced stages of application of the wisdom gained through insight. However, in order for both training in higher concentration and higher insight to be successful, the practitioner must first establish a stable foundation of morality by adopting an ethically sound way of life. So the footnote to that is that these three trainings are called higher trainings only when they're conjoined with renunciation, the genuine intention to become free from samsara, the perpetual cycle of dissatisfactory conditioned existence. Okay. So having discussed higher training in concentration and the cultivation of serenity, we now turn to the higher training in wisdom and cultivation of insight. This involves the 37 harmonies with awakening, practices shared in the Pali and Sanskrit traditions. All 37 harmonies contain elements of all three higher trainings, and they all directly or indirectly cultivate the wisdom that realizes the four truths and the ultimate nature of reality. So this is the wisdom that eliminates ignorance and leads to nirvana. So it's just kind of flagging that the four close placements are part of that bigger list. Yeah, that bigger list of the 37 aspects of awakening. Those are not exactly the same as the 37 practices of a bodhisattva. And so because it's 37, you think it's the same list of 37, but Buddhists love a list. So no, don't conflate them. They're different lists. Yes. So the 37 factors to awakening are shared with all Buddhist traditions, whereas the 37 practices of a bodhisattva are obviously only a Mahayana tradition. Yeah. And is related to the poem by Togme Zangpo. So, just kind of knowing the context for this, I think can help, even if you don't know all of the lists and all of the nuances or anything like that. If you're just knowing that this is coming from a particular agenda to cut the root of samsara. Yeah, there's the particular thrust of all of these practices, which is to fundamentally interrupt the negative habitual patterns of the mind. Yeah, which are reinforced constantly by our mistaken ways of thinking. And so we can do a lot of symptoms relief, but the most effective strategy is if we go straight to the root. Let's see. So maybe we should do just a brief overview of the 4 close placements and then do the meditation just on feeling? Does that work? Do you have any questions so far?
Oh, I just have a comment. I mean, this is wonderful to hear all this. I mean, it's challenging, even after having studied to kind of it's highly conceptual and there's lots of yeah, all the lists and the different ways that the path interacts. But it's just helpful to hear it again. So I just wanted to, kind of express my gratitude.
Sure. Yay, Dharma. Yeah. Yeah, and it's, our approach to the lists has to be one of just kind of like curiosity and joy and not pressure, I think. And that keeps it fun and engaging. If you think, oh no, I have to memorize that list now. Oh no, I forgot that list. I used to know it. Really, like, the main list you need to know is the Four Noble Truths.
Yeah.
Know the Four Noble Truths, know them well. If you're feeling like you can be Mahayanist, then focus on the 6 perfections. Those are your main lists, and all the other lists are somehow going to reinforce your understanding of those. But I think sometimes when we hear a teaching just kind of in the abstract, floating in space without tethering it to where it came from and what the agenda of it is, it's harder to kind of hit the point when you're actually sitting. So whenever you have mental space to go back to the bigger context, I think it's useful, as long as you do it with that kind of curious, happy mind that doesn't put too much pressure on yourself to memorize everything. This particular summary is from that lovely book by Thubten Chodron, Buddhism, One Teacher, Many Traditions. And so she did that in collaboration with His Holiness, the Dalai Lama. And so she says to establish mindfulness means to place our mindfulness on an object comprehended by wisdom. So in this context, mindfulness is related to putting it on something that you've already understood through the lens of wisdom. So body, let's see, feeling, mind, and phenomena are the 4. And in each instance, the self is erroneously conceived as a solid personal identity. We see ourselves as standing alone, independent from other factors, and view everything else, our body, feelings, mind, and phenomena, is like arranged around that self. So the first one, body, the error is conceiving our body to be the place where the self resides. So you're trying to find the mistake rather than going straight to overcoming the mistake, because you already know the answer. The answer is you are not the body and that the body dependently arises. So first you have to pull up the mistake. And the mistake is, I am here inside my body. Yeah. So you have to like search for that experiential quality. And then with feeling, similarly, through your study of wisdom that feelings are not inherently existent and that feelings are not the self. So you have to find that mistake so that you can overcome that mistake. So you conceive feelings to be what the self enjoys and experiences. You're trying to look for that. I feel happy, I feel miserable, I feel indifferent, like I is owning feeling or I is feeling. And then with mind, which we won't do today, but just to get it planted, mind is conceiving our mind to be a real self. So I am what thinks and perceives, or I think, therefore I am, right? So there is mind, but mind is not self. Mind is part of the basis that you label self upon. And that subtle distinction is really the crux of the issue. So finding that main mind, that perceiver, that spacious consciousness that reflects, it almost feels like, oh, now I've found the self, because it's so much more subtle than the feelings in the body. But really, that too, not the self.
Is that main mind that, is that the 5th aggregate essentially?
Yeah, yep, primary consciousness. Yep. And then phenomena is like all the other mental factors, generally speaking, although you can also talk in terms of the quote outside world, depending on which angle you're going with the meditation. But phenomena, generally speaking, is all of the other mental factors besides feeling. So you're conceiving phenomena, in particular attitudes and emotions, as what makes the self afflicted or worthwhile. Right? I have so many problems with anger and jealousy, or my confidence makes me a good person, or whatever you're thinking related to your own mental factors or your own thoughts. Yeah. Um, so first, you got to find it and then unpack it. Yeah. So cute. Okay, so what we're going to do is just start with gentle motivation, short meditation on the breath, and then we're going to pivot to finding feeling and then watching feeling with the agenda of wisdom. So that's kind of the general steps that we'll do. So first step is also just be in the body and relax into the body and let go of any tension that you feel like you might be carrying physically. And if it helps, you can do a scan from the crown of your head down to the tip of your toes, letting go of any tension you might find. And then revive your bodhicitta motivation in your connection with refuge, in your own words to yourself, letting it reawaken. And then with the sound of the bell, shift your focus to the breath. Very simple, direct attention on the breath, allowing all the surface distractions to settle. Different thoughts will arise, but you choose not to give them your focus. When your breath is short and shallow, you simply know that it's short and shallow. When it's deep and long, you simply know that it's deep and long. Just let your focus rest on awareness of the breath without needing to manipulate it in any way. The attention riding it in and riding it out. And then consciously shift your focus from awareness of breath to awareness of feeling, just mere sensation, as opposed to your response to it. So you can start with the body, just the general atmosphere of the body, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Searching for that particular stream of experience, which is sensation. And once you find it, hold your attention there. And see if you can avoid labels like, it is good that I feel good, or it is bad that I feel bad, or this is always how I feel, or I never feel this way. Try to leave out any elaboration and just come back to watching. The body feels unpleasant or uncomfortable or even in pain, or it feels neutral, or it feels pleasant, or even blissful. Just watch it unfold. And then move into observation of the feelings of the mind. What is the general atmosphere, the mood, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral? Find it and then just watch. And then open out your observation of feeling and let whatever is the most dominant, body or mind, take focus naturally, whether it's your physical experience or your mental experience. Just see what draws your attention and watch that. And watch that with the agenda of asking, what is this sensation's relationship to self. Who is having this sensation? What is experiencing this? So let that big open question hold your observation of feeling. And if at any point it feels like I am feeling, feeling is me, or I own feeling, ask yourself, where though? How though? Not needing to come to a conclusion, just deepen and open the exploration. This unfolding of sensation, what is its relationship to self? And then see if you can rest on a gentle conclusion. See if it feels authentic to do so. That feeling is feeling. It is not self. And that feeling dependently arises due to countless causes and conditions. I didn't make it. I don't own it. It just experiences itself. and I label it and respond to it. But what is actually labeling and responding are different aspects of mind, all of which are interdependent as well. May we give ourselves more chance for choice. When I feel this or that, my responses can be any number of things. May they be healthy responses. And with the sound of the bell, relax your attention.
Actually, did you hear the bell, Julia? We didn't hear it here.
Ah,
It doesn't really go through the microphone. I've had that problem too.
it's annoying. Probably Zoom and thinks it's being helpful and weeding it out like it's a traffic sound or something. Imagine the bell.
I always just go ding.
Ding. So, how did that go? Was there some interesting impressions or some ahas or anything that arose from that you feel comfortable to share?
Well, I was have been feeling really tired for a
Mm,
few days, very tired. And during that meditation, I was looking at that. And for a while, I was all around, I'm so tired, I'm so
mm,
tired. And then just thinking, trying to step back from that and just look at what is tired, like
yeah,
instead of me. It's not just me. And then also that relieved that feeling of sort of like, oh, I'm not doing things right because I'm so tired.
yeah, the whole
And
story about tired. You could just be like, "Tired is tired." It doesn't
I
have to
know,
mean anything in and of itself, yeah.
it was really useful. Gosh, I never thought to do that before.
Thanks, Buddha.
Yeah, thank you very much.
So much, you guys. Yeah, what else?
Anything from you, Teddy?
Yeah, I had a similar experience. I actually, I often experience like pain behind or just discomfort behind my right shoulder blade when I'm holding the posture meditation.
Yep.
And I appreciate how getting curious and like exploring that area in a way actually like loosens the attention on it. It's almost like when I try to focus on something else, the pain becomes louder.
Yeah.
Versus if I just allow like if it's like a curious space where I can kind of like see, oh, like this actually isn't mine or isn't like all of what's there, kind of, it like opens up that space a little more. If that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and really curiosity is the main starting point. Find it and be curious. You kind of know where it's going intellectually, that, you're trying to undermine grasping at inherent existence, but you don't have to run to the end. You don't have to race to the end. The first step is really just what is the story I'm building around this sensation, and what is the seeming mandate it's giving me, and does it have to? And just kind of having that curiousness is really big. Yeah. All right, well, we'll go ahead and dedicate and see you next time. Gewadi Nyurudang Lama Sangye Drugyune Droa Chinkamalupa De Salagupa Sho Janchu Semcho Rinpoche Make Panam Ke Gyuchi Ke Panyampa Me Payang Gone Gondu Pawa Sho Tony Dawa Rinpoche Make Panam Ke Gyuchi Ke Panyampa Me Payang Gone Gondu Pawa Sho